Hi there, in this self-fix video I'll be replacing the rear bearings and shaft on a Hotpoint TDL30 tumble dryer. These are quite common and cover a wide range of machines, therefore this video could be helpful on a number of other makes and models. Before you do any work on a domestic appliance, disconnect it from the mains power supply first. Free the top by undoing the two screws at the back and slide the lid backwards and off. Remove the bearing cover, and this will give you access to the copper earth strap and the retaining pin holding the bearing shaft in place. Check the condition of the copper strap and that the shaft hasn't worn a hole in it. If so, you may need a new one. Undo the screws holding it in place and remove it. Now you can bend one end of the pin straight, then pull it out. At this point the drum will still be held in place by the front plate, so the drum shaft should stay in the bearing. Use a piece of rag to prevent damaging the control knob with the pliers as you grip it to pull it off. The fascia panel on this machine is held on by two screws on the left inside edge, and the panel has a lip on the opposite outer edge that hooks into the bracket on the cabinet. When the screws have been removed, slide the panel to the right and it will unhook from the cabinet. If you have more than one switch on your machine, it will be worth noting where they fit, either with a sketch or a photo, just so you reconnect them to the right terminal. Or if, like this machine, there is only one switch, it doesn't matter which terminal they fit on. The door switch should come undone easily enough, because it's hooked into the front panel and will probably be tied to it on the inside so it won't fall. But watch out for this when removing the front panel, or you may pull the wires off. The screws holding the bottom part of the front panel are hidden under the kick strip, which should just pull off. There are normally 3 screws on the bottom of the panel and 3 on the top, but that can differ depending on the make and model of your machine. It's advisable to undo the screws on the bottom of the panel first, so it will stay in place when the last screw is removed. Now undo the screws on the top of the panel, and providing the machine is upright, the panel should stay in place. Lift the drum slightly and ease the panel away from the cabinet, but be careful because there may be a tie wire or clip holding the switch wires to it. With the panel away from the cabinet, the retaining clip or wire tie can now be removed. The exhaust thermostat wires need to be taken off before the panel can be put on one side out of the way. When the front panel was removed, the drum may have come out the bearing and dropped inside the cabinet, but you'll still need to remove the fascia bar before it can be easily withdrawn from the cabinet. When all the screws have been removed, you can let the fascia bar hang over the side of the cabinet out of the way. You may need to unhook the wiring loom from the base of the machine. In this case, don't just tug it or you could damage the timer. If the drum is not free of the bearing, then slide it forward. This will release the tension on the belt as it comes out of the bearing block. The belt will now slide over the motor shaft and allow you to remove the drum from the cabinet. You could need a flat-bladed screwdriver or something similar to lever the bearing block free from the housing. Then a pair of pliers to grip and pull it free. On badly worn bearings, the hole in the block is usually oval, but only on really worn bearings will you ever need to replace the housing as well. The bearing shaft is fitted to the rear of the drum by 3 screws, which are accessible through the front opening. It's advisable to hold it when you remove the final screw to prevent it from spinning. While you have the drum out, give the inside of the cabinet a good clean to get rid of the excess fluff. The bearing kit comes with all the parts you would need to do a complete repair. The holes in the drum shaft assembly are not threaded, so it would be to your advantage to cut the thread in all 3 holes before fitting it. I find it easiest to insert the screw into the back of the drum first and fit the bearing shaft onto it, rather than trying to line up all the holes at the same time. Once the first screw is in place, the other 2 are simple. There are 2 ways to fit the bearing block. Some people prefer to fit the drum and slide the bearing onto it, but I would rather sight the bearing block in the housing and then slide the drum shaft into it. The drum is relatively light in comparison with its size, so it's easy to manoeuvre into the bearing block, but just make sure no wires are trapped between it and the rear seal. As I said earlier, these kits come complete, but you may not need all the parts in them. The washer is not always needed, but if you need to change the bearing shaft, it probably will be. When you bend the retaining pin, make sure it forms the shape of an S. This way it won't twist in the shaft as it rotates and catch the copper earth strip. Ensure the earth strip is touching the tip of the bearing shaft after it's been screwed in place. It not only provides an earth for the inner drum, but also helps dissipate any static electricity in the drum which may have been caused by nylon items rubbing together. Make sure to replace the bearing cover after you've fitted the earth strip. This will keep out any fluff or grip that may get attracted to it. With the drum in place, you can now refit the fascia bar. It should fit in a small recess either side of the cabinet so that it prevents the side panels from flopping around. Once you've located the fascia bar in the right position, all the screw holes should line up. As with most machines, not all the screws are the same size, so if you put them in a separate place for each part you remove, you won't end up with small ones to fit into large holes. The belt would have made a mark on the outside of the drum during normal use, so to refit the original belt or to fit a new one, just loop it over the drum and slide it back so it sits on the line. This will place it in the right position for the motor shaft. Now, using a long heavy duty screwdriver or something similar, place it between the drum and the belt and hook one end under the motor shaft. Lever down on the other end of the screwdriver and the belt can be slid off the blade and onto the motor shaft. Don't forget to reconnect the exhaust thermostats before you refit the front panel, because you can't do it once the panel's in place. And don't worry about the internal exhaust tube at this point, because it gets fitted from the back when the machine's been reassembled. The front of the drum will need to be lifted slightly and the edge of the ducting slid inside it, as the front panel is located in place. So it's important to get the bottom of the panel seated properly before you line up the top part. Refit the top screws first, because this will prevent the drum from pulling off of the ducting seal. Now replace the lower screws. There's a lip on the door switch that hooks into a hole in the front panel. This can be fitted before you replace the panel, or as in this case, once it's in place. Refitting the screws is straightforward, but you may need to hold the back of the switch with your free hand initially to prevent it coming out. And don't forget to retie the wires to the front panel, as this will prevent them flapping around during use. Reconnect the wires onto the switches. If you have more than one switch, check with your previously made notes or picture as to where each wire goes. Hook the right edge of the fascia panel into the bracket on the outside of the cabinet and screw the other edge on from the inside. The control knob is straightforward because there is only one way for it to go on, but just check to make sure the metal ring is on the end of the plastic shaft before you push it on. Once you've refitted the top, move to the back and undo the collar that holds the exhaust tube in place. If you put your arm inside the tube after you've inserted it, you can feel for the ledge on the front ducting that it sits on. Ease the tube onto this ledge and remove your arm. Be careful not to pull the tube off the ledge as you do so. Replace the collar and refit the screws. The machine is now ready for testing. On behalf of Selfix UK, we would like to thank you for watching this video and hope you found it interesting. Goodbye.